You check your retirement account balance on your phone, a number stares back at you. It feels big, it feels safe. But somewhere in the back of your mind, a question won't go away. Is this enough? Almost everyone asks that question the same way, but the real answer is far stranger than a bigger number. Because retirement was never really about how much money you have. It's about one number nobody teaches you in school. A single percentage, 4%. And once you understand where it came from, you'll never look at your savings account the same way again. Let's start with the moment this number was born. In 1994, a financial advisor named William Bengen sat down with decades of stock and bond market data. He wasn't trying to invent a rule. He was trying to answer a much smaller question. If someone retires today, how much can they safely withdraw from their savings every year without running out of money? Simple question, devastating implications. Bengen tested withdrawal rate after withdrawal rate against real historical markets. The Great Depression, the 1970s stagflation crisis, every brutal downturn America had lived through. And he found something remarkable. If a retiree withdrew 4% of their portfolio in the first year, then adjusted that amount for inflation every year after, their money would last at least 30 years in almost every historical scenario, even the worst ones. 4%. That's it. That's the number. Why does this matter to you right now, decades before you retire? Because a single percentage secretly controls the entire math of your financial life. Not your salary, not your job title, not even how much you've saved so far. Just this one number and what it demands of you. Here's the reframe. Flip the 4% rule around and it stops being a withdrawal strategy. It becomes a target number. If you want your investments to generate a certain amount of income each year, you simply multiply that income by 25. Want $40,000 a year in retirement? You need roughly $1 million invested. Want $80,000 a year? $2 million. Suddenly retirement isn't a vague feeling. It's arithmetic. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because your brain doesn't process this number the way it should. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist who won a Nobel Prize for exposing how humans actually make financial decisions, showed something unsettling about the mind and money. People are wired to overweight the present and underweight the future. A dollar spent today feels real. A dollar saved for a version of you that doesn't exist, yet feels almost imaginary. That's why the math of the 4% rule feels abstract, even though it is one of the most concrete numbers in personal finance. Think about what that means. Every latte, every upgrade, every impulse purchase isn't just a small transaction. It's a tiny withdrawal from a future income stream that hasn't been built yet. Not because spending is wrong, but because your brain doesn't naturally translate spending today into missing income decades from now. Kahneman's research explains why that translation almost never happens on its own. So, where did this idea really come from before Bengen gave it a name? Long before 1994, a group of finance professors at Trinity University ran their own version of the same question. Their paper became known simply as the Trinity Study, and it tested withdrawal rates across nearly 7 decades of market history, using different combinations of stocks and bonds. Their conclusion echoed Bengen's almost exactly: a withdrawal rate around 4% from a portfolio with a healthy mix of stocks and bonds gave retirees a high probability of never running out of money over a 30-year retirement. 2 separate research efforts, 2 different methods, the same answer. That's rare in finance, and it's why the 4% rule became something close to gospel in retirement planning circles. But gospel doesn't mean unquestioned, because here's the twist nobody tells you at the start of this story. The 4% rule was built on historical US market data. It assumes future markets will behave somewhat like the past. It assumes a 30-year retirement, not a 40-year one. It assumes a certain mix of stocks and bonds, rebalanced consistently. Change any of those assumptions and the number moves. Morningstar, the investment research firm, has run updated versions of this analysis using more recent market conditions and different expected returns. Depending on the assumptions, the research has suggested a starting withdrawal rate closer to 3.3% or 3.8% may be safer for some retirees, especially those planning for a longer retirement or facing lower expected future returns. Notice what just happened. The number moved by less than a single percentage point. And that tiny shift can mean needing hundreds of thousands of dollars more or less in your account before you can retire. This is the counterintuitive twist hiding inside the whole conversation. You've been taught to think of retirement planning as a savings problem. Save more, cut expenses, grow the number. But the 4% rule reveals that retirement is actually a withdrawal problem wearing a savings costume. The real question was never, how much can you accumulate? It was always, how much can you sustainably take out for the rest of your life without the well running dry? Why does this distinction matter so much? Because it explains a strange pattern that shows up in real retiree behavior. Research from Vanguard on investor behavior has found that many retirees, despite having sufficient savings, chronically underspend in retirement out of fear of running out of money. They followed the rules. They hit their number, and they still can't relax. Why? Because nobody ever taught them that the 4% rule isn't just a limit. It's also a permission slip. It tells you not only what you shouldn't withdraw, but what you safely can. That fear doesn't come from a lack of money. It comes from a lack of clarity about the math underneath the money. Let's go deeper into why the number 4% works at all mechanically. It isn't magic. It's the result of a portfolio that, on average, grows faster than the amount being withdrawn from it, especially in the early years of retirement. When you withdraw a modest percentage and the remaining balance stays invested in a mix of stocks and bonds, market growth continues working in the background, replenishing much of what gets withdrawn. Some years the market falls and you draw down principal. Other years the market rises faster than your withdrawal and your balance actually grows even in retirement. This is compounding, working in reverse. Instead of growing a pile of savings, you're managing a pile of savings that is simultaneously shrinking from withdrawals and growing from returns. And the 4% figure is the rate at which those two forces roughly balance out over a typical 30-year window based on historical data. Here's a question worth sitting with. If markets have been kind enough historically to support a 4% withdrawal rate, why do so many people still retire with anxiety instead of confidence? Because they never ran their own numbers. They borrowed someone else's conclusion without doing the arithmetic for their own life. This is where the modern financial mirror comes into focus. Because this isn't really a story about retirees decades from now. It's a story about a decision you're making today, whether you realize it or not. Every dollar you choose to invest instead of spend right now is a dollar working to eventually generate future annual income at roughly 4% of its value. A single extra $100 invested today, assuming long-term historical market growth, isn't just $100. Compounded over 20 or 30 years, it can become a meaningfully larger sum, capable of generating real annual income under the 4% framework. Suddenly, small decisions today stop looking small. Meanwhile, debt works in the exact opposite direction. High-interest debt doesn't just cost you the interest payment, it costs you the future income that money could have eventually generated had it been invested instead. The 4% rule reveals debt's real price tag, and it's usually far higher than the number printed on your statement. Federal Reserve data on household finances has repeatedly shown that a significant share of Americans nearing retirement age have little to nothing saved specifically for retirement. That's not simply a story about low income or bad luck. It's often a story about a missing mental model. Without a number like 25 times your desired income, retirement can feel like a fog. With it, retirement becomes a destination with visible coordinates. Let's return to Bengen for a moment because there's something poetic about how his research is often misunderstood. People treat the 4% rule like a strict law of the universe. It isn't. Bengen himself, in later research, revisited his original number and suggested that under certain conditions, particularly with more diversified portfolios, withdrawal rates could potentially be higher than his original estimate, closer to 4.5% or even beyond in some scenarios. The number was never meant to be a cage. It was meant to be a starting compass heading, a reasonable, historically grounded estimate to build a plan around, then adjust as your actual life and actual markets unfold. This is the real lesson hiding underneath decades of retirement research. The 4% rule isn't really about the number 4. It's about giving yourself a concrete, calculable target instead of a vague hope. It transforms retirement from a feeling you're chasing into a math problem you can actually solve. So what does this mean for you specifically today? It means the account balance you saw earlier isn't just a number. It's a future paycheck waiting to be unlocked at a rate the math already knows even if you don't. It means every automatic transfer into an investment account is a tiny act of building tomorrow's income. It means every unnecessary high-interest debt payment is quietly erasing income you haven't even had the chance to build yet. Dalbar's long-running studies on investor behavior have found something sobering. Individual investors on average tend to earn significantly lower returns than the very market funds they're invested in, largely because of poorly timed decisions, panic selling during downturns, and chasing performance after the fact. The math of the 4% rule assumes disciplined, long-term investing. Human psychology, left unchecked, often gets in the way of exactly that, which means the biggest threat to your retirement number was never the market. It was you, in a moment of fear, making an emotional decision instead of a mathematical one. So here's the real question worth asking yourself, not how much do I have saved, not even am I on track, but this, what is my number? Not a vague, comfortable sounding figure, an actual number calculated by taking the annual income you want in retirement and multiplying it by 25. Once that number exists, it stops being abstract. It becomes a finish line you can actually see. You checked your balance earlier and felt a familiar, foggy uncertainty. That fog wasn't really about the size of the number. It was about not knowing what the number was for. Now you do. It's not just savings, it's the seed of a future paycheck, growing at a rate researchers have spent decades quietly measuring on your behalf. The real answer was never how much you have. It was always what that number is capable of becoming 4% at a time. But let's slow down for a moment because there's a piece of this story that most explanations skip entirely. Why 30 years? Why did Bengen choose that particular time horizon in the first place? Because in 1994, a 30-year retirement was a reasonable, even generous assumption. Someone retiring at 65 could expect statistically to live into their mid-90s in a worst-case planning scenario. 30 years covered almost every outcome, but something has shifted quietly in the decades since. People are retiring earlier, people are living longer. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has tracked a slow, steady rise in life expectancy at retirement age over the past several decades, even accounting for recent fluctuations. A 30-year assumption built for someone retiring at 65 starts to strain when applied to someone retiring at 50. This is where the math quietly punishes anyone who copies the rule without adjusting it. A 4% withdrawal rate tested against a 30-year retirement is not the same math as a 4% withdrawal rate tested against a 45-year retirement. Stretch the timeline and the same percentage that once felt safe starts to look reckless. This is why some in the early retirement community, often associated with what's called the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, have gravitated toward more conservative withdrawal rates, sometimes closer to 3.5%, to account for those extra uncertain decades. Notice what's happening here. The number 4 wasn't handed down from a mountain. It was calculated under specific assumptions for a specific kind of retiree. Your job isn't to worship the number, it's to understand the assumptions baked inside it, and then ask whether your own life matches them. Let's ask another question. Where should this money actually sit while it's growing? Eugene Fama, the economist often credited as the father of modern portfolio theory, alongside decades of collaborators, helped build the intellectual foundation behind a simple but uncomfortable idea. Markets are remarkably difficult to consistently outsmart. Individual investors trying to pick winning stocks or time when to buy and sell tend to underperform a simple, low-cost, diversified index fund over long stretches of time. This isn't a controversial fringe theory anymore. It's one of the most heavily tested conclusions in financial economics. Burton Malkiel, in his enduring work on market efficiency, made a similar case in plainer language. A blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a newspaper stock listings could, over time, assemble a portfolio that performs comparably to one carefully selected by professional experts. That's not an insult to professionals. It's a description of how efficiently information moves through modern markets, making sustained outperformance extraordinarily rare. Why does this matter to your 4% number? Because the entire withdrawal rate calculation assumes your money is invested somewhere that captures long-term market growth, not sitting in cash losing value to inflation, and not gambling on individual stocks hoping to beat the market. Index funds, low cost and broadly diversified, aren't just a popular recommendation. They're the closest real-world approximation of the exact data Bengen and the Trinity researchers used to build their original models. Put your money somewhere fundamentally different from that model, and you're not really using the 4% rule anymore. You're using a number that was calculated for a different strategy entirely and hoping it still applies to yours. Here's where the story gets a little uncomfortable again. Fidelity's ongoing retirement research has tracked something revealing among actual savers. Average retirement account balances, even among people who have been saving for decades, often fall well short of the 25 times income target implied by the 4% rule. Not because people are careless, often because they never translated the abstract advice to save for retirement into an actual specific number to aim for. This is the gap between knowing something and calculating something. Almost everyone knows they should save for retirement. Far fewer have ever sat down and multiplied their desired annual income by 25 to see the actual target staring back at them. Vague goals produce vague effort. Specific numbers produce specific behavior. So let's make it specific right now in a way you can actually use. Take the annual income you'd want in retirement in today's dollars, not a dream number, a realistic one, based on what you currently spend, minus a mortgage that might be paid off, plus healthcare costs that tend to rise. Multiply that number by 25. That result is your target portfolio size, according to the 4% framework. It's not a guess, it's not a hope, it's arithmetic grounded in decades of historical market research. Once you have that number, a second question becomes unavoidable. How much do you need to invest starting today to reach it? This is where compound growth quietly does most of the heavy lifting. If you give it enough time, money invested in your 20s or 30s has decades to benefit from market growth compounding on itself year after year. The same dollar invested in your 50s has far less runway to grow before you need it. This isn't a moral judgment about starting late, it's simply a mathematical reality about time being the single largest input in the entire equation, arguably larger than the amount you invest each month. That's why the earliest years of investing often matter disproportionately more than the years right before retirement. A modest amount invested early, left alone to compound through decades of market cycles, can eventually outgrow a much larger amount invested later with less time to grow. Time isn't just a factor in this equation. In many ways, it's the main character. Now, here's the twist most people never see coming, buried inside their own psychology. Richard Thaler, another economist whose work on behavioral finance earned a Nobel Prize, spent decades studying why people fail to act in their own long-term financial interest, even when they know exactly what they should do. His research on a concept sometimes called mental accounting showed that people treat money differently depending on which mental bucket it sits in, even though a dollar is a dollar no matter where it came from. Money earmarked for retirement, sitting untouched in an account, feels different from cash sitting in checking, even when both represent identical purchasing power. This explains a strange but common behavior. People will carry high-interest credit card debt while simultaneously letting money sit in a low-interest savings account because the two pools of money feel psychologically separate, even though combining them mathematically would leave the person better off. Thaler's research, along with the broader field he helped pioneer, gave this kind of behavior a name and, more importantly, gave financial planners tools to help people design around it, using automatic transfers and default retirement contributions that work with human psychology instead of against it. This is why so many workplace retirement plans now automatically enroll employees with contribution rates that automatically increase over time unless the employee actively opts out. It isn't paternalistic, it's an acknowledgement based on decades of behavioral research that willpower alone rarely wins against the quiet, constant pull of present moment spending. It means the 4% rule was never really just a retirement calculation, it's a lens. Once you understand it, you start seeing every financial decision differently. That subscription you forgot you're still paying for isn't just $15 a month, it's $15 a month that could have been invested, compounding for decades, eventually capable of generating its own small stream of future income. That bonus you're about to spend on something you'll forget in a year is also, simultaneously, a fraction of a future paycheck you're choosing not to build. None of this means never spending on things you enjoy. The 4% rule isn't a call for austerity, it's a call for awareness. Spend consciously, knowing exactly what you're trading away. Save consciously, knowing exactly what you're building toward. The number itself is neutral. What you do with the awareness it creates is entirely up to you. Let's close the loop on where this all began. You looked at your account balance and felt a familiar fog of uncertainty, unsure whether the number in front of you meant safety or worry. That fog was never really about the size of the number. It was about the absence of a framework to interpret it. Bengen's research, the Trinity Study, decades of data from the Federal Reserve, Vanguard, Fidelity, and Morningstar, all of it exists for one purpose: to replace vague uncertainty with a concrete, testable, adjustable plan. You now have that framework. Multiply your desired income by 25 and you have your target. Understand the assumptions behind the 4%, adjust for your own timeline, your own risk tolerance, your own life expectancy, and you have a plan built specifically for you, not a generic rule borrowed from someone else's retirement. The real answer was never how much you have. It was always what that number is capable of becoming, 4% at a time. If this changed the way you think about that number on your screen, there's more where that came from. Every week, this channel breaks down another hidden pattern behind your money. The ones nobody teaches you, the ones that quietly decide your future. So if you want to actually understand your retirement instead of just hoping for the best, hit subscribe. Your future self will thank you for it. See you in the next one.